All right, all right. I'm glad everyone is here with my man Chris. He's back in the United States. He's always traveling all over the world, picking up big tidbits of what is really going on in the financial IT world. And we're going to have a conversation today around something that's really getting some attention and some traction, especially of late. And that is quantum, Quantum, quantum. Why are we talking about quantum when we're talking about finance and we're talking about IT? Because, people associate quantum computing with an IT function, but not really a financial function. We're going to unpack some of that because we had conversation and Chris said, you know what, we got to talk about this and we need to bring it to our people right away. So Chris, you like to introduce yourself today?
Grant, so happy to be here with you once again, my good friend and co-host. And yeah, we want to talk about quantum computing. That's really kind of the topic that's been on my mind a little bit and the mind of many others.
Well, here's the deal, and some people don't realize that what quantum does, it's a computing model. It's a differentiated model of how it works. It's kind of cool the way it works. It's kind of hard to explain it to would you say someone that doesn't really understand it. But it uses qubits, right? What's a qubit? Usually in digital computing, you have a zero and a one, zero, one, on, off, on, off. It happens, a lot. But in the quantum, a qubit can be both at the same time. And this is almost, you think about, some futuristic type thing, but this is how it works and enables us to solve problems a lot quicker than what it would take usually. And everybody's been following me, and I always talk about this from a information technology perspective or an intelligent technology perspective. But there's two variables I always look at: speed and communication. Quantum computing is a function of speed that is light years ahead of what we're doing right now. So the big question is, why should financial institutions care about quantum computing now when the technology is still emerging? So I want to ask my friend Chris, what are you seeing in this realm?
Well, Grant, that was a very good job of taking something very complex and making it simple, right? So I think that the two things you mentioned, which is of course speed, and that's really one of the biggest features of this. But I would mention a third one also, which is security. But because of that way that they do things, because things are a lot faster, things are also a lot more secure in the quantum space.
Well, not only
So
just secure, and you bringing that up, because that is a nice thing. You got to have, anytime you're doing any kind of digital functionality, you've got to have security. It's got to be controlled to a certain degree. And here's the deal with quantum is that there have been things that go on in regular compute cycles right now that they use from a cybersecurity level that keeps the bad guys out. And what they're finding out that quantum can break these types of codes potentially, very, very easily. So we're talking about RSA or ECC encryption. So if we can break these codes, if banking systems aren't on top of these things, they could be on the lagging end, right? And then they'll be trying to in a what we call a post quantum world potentially, and they're not ahead of this thing, so they can get hacked pretty easily. Just give us some more context around it. What are you thinking that should I do quantum now? Do I wait? Should I just be aware of it, or what do you think?
Well, let's just talk a little on that security issue, because one of the things potentially that quantum computing can do is to break many of the encryptions we have today, right? And I think for a lot of people, maybe that doesn't sound, oh yeah, okay, it's another, so we'll combat it. But this actually goes further, and going further is one of the most innovative things that we've had happen over the last decade or so has been cryptocurrency.
Mhm.
Cryptocurrency is based on the blockchain, right? And the blockchain today, in its simplest form, is the most secure database that we have, right? It's immutable. The blockchain gives us that protection. What happens with quantum computing is, if it in fact can break these things, then it can go ahead and be able to break into the blockchain, right? So what does that mean? Well, that would mean that pretty much across the board in cryptocurrency, it wouldn't be safe. It would no longer have that secure factor that makes it usable for us in our normal everyday lives. And I know not everyone is using crypto in every day, but there are many that are, and this is increasing. So the potential impact just in that one area could be kind of dramatic for us, so it presents a lot of interesting things, in that if I'm a bank, say, or I'm a government today, or even a big company, yeah, I can't really consider shifting over to digital currencies, right? Whether it's a CBDG, a central bank digital currency, or it's cryptocurrency, any of the major ones, much less the thousands of minor ones there. So the issue becomes, yes, I need to stay in the old system also, although the risk is just as great in that space also, when you start talking about being able to hack into things based on the power and speed of a quantum computer. And it becomes even more interesting, Grant, when we start looking at this, because already today you have companies that are building blockchains and they have crypto, and they're saying already that they're quantum proof, right? So it's a very interesting thing, because to my knowledge today, Grant, there's no measure, there's no test, there's no certification that says that you are quantum proof. So what does quantum proof really mean? Or is quantum proof, when people use it today, just a marketing tactic? So I thought it would be kind of interesting to look into this and dive into this a little bit deeper, because there's many other aspects of it we want to talk about, especially when we talk about it in the financial community.
Yeah, there's a lot in something like this. We've got to have good connectivity, and all important in today's world, and how we're going to move forward. Playing field, when we think about the I'd say the IT plane and how we operate. We've got to really be thinking about this, and thinking about it in a big, and see what the impacts are going to be. Because until we get a handle on how this roll out, and what are the contingencies if certain things happen, you just brought up a great point. To migrate to a blockchain type of platform is for security, and now we find out, hey, you can use quantum computing to a platform, from an encryption standpoint. Whoa, that's the problem. So, but as technology evolves, it's always going to just par for the course. You got to start weighing out the good, the bad, the ugly with need to do this because, and as you've seen it, certain entities that cost millions or not billions of dollars. Think about last year when the airlines, a simple shutdown of airports throughout the United States and probably parts of the world. On digital technology, and we've got to be, very dependent on the security. And so we have to stay ahead on the quantum world. That's what I would say. The quantum, we need to investigate it. Doesn't mean you have to go out and have, major investments in it. Understand it, right? You've got to understand it and what its capability. As we all know, well, not to say we all know, a lot of people know how stocks are traded platforms and speed to value. The quicker I know and have information, I can make a decision on. So if quantum can then at such volume, your capability first to market, type of strategies is you can deploy quantum at scale, either now or in the future, and not be behind the 8-ball as sometimes we often find ourselves. We want to educate our audience. We want our audience to understand now how they can get ahead of it, understanding what is the potential of affect your world as it is either enhanced, actually degraded, because there's huge investments. We're talking about IBMs. We're talking about your major players in this space are investing heavily in computing. You just came from Southeast Asia. I mean, just recently, Chris, are you seeing things in quantum at this point?
Well, Grant, you just went through a lot of things that we need to unpack more individually. We've got some other sessions. Let's take a break right now, and we'll move on and hit some of those things because they are interesting. Thanks, Grant.
Sounds good.
This is our Caribbean, the world's first climate smart zone, a collection of economies that thrive on renewable energy and technological innovations to confront the effects of climate change and create spaces for its people to be safe, productive, and happy. We are proud to be economies that are at one with our planet while taking advantage of the fourth industrial revolution. In Caribbean 2040, policies are anchored in a sound institutional framework that allows citizens to move freely, experience an improved rule of law, and give expression to their creativity and talents. In Jamaica, economic stability is the norm. Productivity has grown so much that the GDP per capita has increased by 250% since 2018. Innovation is the norm. Tech-savvy youth are everywhere, and the orange economy is world famous. In the Bahamas, climate change risks are better confronted through strong adaptation for the 700 plus islands in the archipelago. More than 40% of the nation's coastlines have been reinforced to prevent erosion, creating numerous specialized jobs focused on climate adaptation, infrastructure, and resilience. The unemployment rate is less than 2%. Educated national youth strive to be innovative entrepreneurs, valuing stronger family units. Because of this, crime is at an all-time low. In Barbados, innovative battery storage technologies have transformed the landscape. Public transportation is powered through solar energy. 80% of the island's energy is created from renewable sources, creating thousands of jobs while reducing energy spending. LED streetlights illuminate highways and communities at night, saving millions of dollars each year for the government, business, and consumers. In Guyana, as one of the hemisphere's leading oil and gas producers, Guyana is able to export 90% of its fuel production while utilizing safe and environmentally friendly methods. Guyana's energy and forest wealth has been carefully managed, ensuring smart investments on behalf of its citizens. Supported by a robust broadband infrastructure, citizens' interactions with the government are conducted online in a more effective, efficient, and transparent way. Wi-Fi services are free for all, and roaming charges no longer exist. In Suriname, government spending is highly effective and efficient, thanks to the introduction of the Economic Stabilization Program, birthed from its own people. Also, modern farming methods, to include water-resistant seeds, have increased food production yields, making Suriname a significant global food source. In Trinidad and Tobago, now one of the world's leading technology hubs, it's home to more than 300 private sector businesses that have prospered with the development and application of innovative technologies in energy, IT, and business services. A major regional export is advisory services based on music, cuisine, sports, and fashion, with creative icons demonstrating how to effectively extract revenue from intellectual property. The nation is still world famous for organic chocolate and specialized branded liqueurs.
Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel. Our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, RTV.network.
Well, great, Grant. I'm glad that we're back.
We had a little technical difficulty earlier, but I think we're back with some basics of internet to get messages across. So, Chris, you heard what I had to say. What do you think about it?
Well, Grant, you went through a lot of different things, and I'm going to back up a little bit and try to take them one by one. And in our other two sessions, we should get through it all. So,
well, it looks like Chris has now had the same problem I had earlier because without communication.
No, Grant, I think everything's fine on this side. Yeah. So a lot
right
of
ahead. I want to hear your thoughts.
A lot of what we're seeing today in quantum computing is, yes, at its very early stages. And the reason today, I think, in the financial community that we're seeing such interest is because they want to try to be ahead of things.
We're starting to still get,
and that's new for the bank.
Yeah,
that's new for the banking industry, and it's also something that, you know, if we go back to banks in general, they generally will sit back on new things and allow those new things to develop first. So what we like to say is that every bank likes the latest and greatest second. They want to see it happen somewhere else first, because it's all about managing risk for them. And of course, new technologies are very useful and helpful, but they're also a bit risky from a bank's point of view. Now, what's changed here in the quantum space is I'm hearing from a lot of my friends, banker friends, and people in the industry that banks are absolutely ahead for once on some of this. And what I mean by that is that today quantum computers are still very bulky. There's still has a lot of work to really get them to the point where they're usable across the board. But there are a number of companies today that are hosting quantum computers. And what I mean by that is they actually have and own the quantum computer, and they allow others to buy blocks of time onto that computer so that they can do their work. And surprising to me, over the last year or so, a number of banks, big banks, have bought space on quantum computers and are using that space right now with small teams, but they're using it to be able to see what they can do, what the possibilities are, how that they can go forward and be able to be ready for quantum computing. Okay, so those small teams right now are using these quantum computers based on the time that they've bought. There's a lot of things that they're looking at. From what I'm hearing out there in the industry, and you're right, Grant, I just got back yesterday from Korea and spent a bunch of time in this particular topic, along with a number of others. You know, for the last couple of years, the topic of quantum computing has been very interesting to me. And everywhere that I go, I'm looking to ask about it, to find out what's going on, what are people doing, what we might be able to expect, how we can better understand this new technology, which is a revolutionary technology, I will add. Okay, so with that, what we will talk about in the upcoming two segments are going to be more specifics about that. But let me say just a few things right now. Okay, so with quantum computing, one of the most interesting things for banks is speed. Okay, and we call that quantum connections. Okay, so if you think about a bank and you think about their network of branches, you think about their network of ATMs, you think about the networks they have on the corporate side, you think about the networks that are out there that are processing credit card transactions as well as debit card transactions. And you think about it for a second, you quickly realize that there is a lot of information that it has to move. Huge amounts of information. You know, and banks are large institutions, and they're really technical institutions. The technology sections, the IT departments of these big banks are bigger than IBM's IT, bigger than Microsoft's, bigger than Google's. Okay, so we're talking, you know, the really very seriously large technology, and they know and understand technology well. Unfortunately, the issue the banks really have is that a lot of their time, of their technology departments and their people, they say up to 80% of that time and the budgets is spent on maintaining old technology that actually runs the bank. This is the foundation of what the banks do. So that can't change, which makes it even more exciting, actually, that the banks have chosen to invest in time on quantum computers with teams designed to do that. But the benefits for them are potentially very clear. Speed is one of the biggest benefits. And like I mentioned earlier, we'll see quantum connections as probably the first thing that they roll out to be able to take advantage of this. So that speed will allow them to not double, not triple, probably quadruple or more the amount of information that they can move across networks and be able to respond much faster to many more requests that come into the bank, many more things that have to be moving. And we'll talk, I'll just mention one thing that Grant did bring up in the last session that we talked about, which is also other markets. And by other markets, I mean the stock market, the bond market, the trading that goes on in currencies, all these kind of things. Because, and Grant's point was very important. When you talk about those markets, speed is the key. It is today. It was a decade ago. It was 2 decades ago. Anytime that I can trade faster than everyone else, anytime that I can get a nanosecond of advantage is an opportunity for me to be able to make a move in the market that can be ahead of everybody and hopefully becomes profitable. So it's not just banks looking at this space and looking at the speed that's offered. It's also with any of the big companies that do trading, that do any of the energy markets and any of those markets that you can think of, because that speed is what gives them that slight advantage. Okay, it certainly helps them with, as our markets move quicker, whether it's up or down, be able to move and compensate. Because keep in mind that, if you're trading properly, yes, it's easy to trade when the markets are moving up. What's more difficult is as markets move down, and they ebb and flow, they go up and down. As markets move down, is to trade and be profitable on that side. And what we call that in the industry is shorting, right? So when you short the market, so when you go in and you actually are predicting that the market will go down, it's an opportunity to make money, as well as predicting if the market goes up. And again, the key thing there is speed. So a lot of these organizations are looking very closely at quantum connections so that they can be able to double up on their speed, increase the amount of information that's moved in faster time. And then we layer on top of that the better security that's offered from quantum computers. Now, I'm not in touch with the bad guys, but I would definitely say and predict that they are also looking at these things and trying to be ahead of things. Because, keep in mind the battles between good and bad, they're an arm race, right? It's just like we have in the world today. If somebody has a bomb, I have a bigger bomb. If somebody has a plane, well, I have a way of shooting it down. So this is what goes on across the board when we talk about good and bad. And we'll come to more of this after this break. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you.
In today's fast-paced financial landscape, access to capital is the key to success. At the heart of this revolution is Case Capital Markets, powered by SETI-Case. Here, innovation and investment converge, creating a dynamic environment where businesses can thrive and reach new heights. Introducing Grant McGaugh, the Senior Advisor at Case Capital Markets. Grant is a visionary leader, dedicated to connecting businesses with institutional capital and strategic funding. His expertise opens doors to game-changing investment opportunities, making him an invaluable partner for companies looking to scale and succeed in the competitive world of finance. With an impressive 25 years in technology, 9 years in healthcare, and 6 years in investment banking, Grant McGaugh has a proven track record. He has successfully closed over $500 million in high-value transactions, seamlessly bridging technology, healthcare, and infrastructure with innovative financial solutions. His experience is a testament to his ability to drive success. Case Capital Markets offers businesses direct access to over 32,000 venture capital firms, private equity funds, family offices, and institutional investors. This network empowers mid-market companies with under $100 million in revenue to scale beyond their limits, unlocking unprecedented growth potential. Debt, equity, growth capital, public offerings. These are the building blocks of the future of capital access. Whether you're scaling a business, seeking investment, or exploring market expansion, Grant McGaugh is your trusted partner. Together, you can unlock capital and create long-term financial success. The future belongs to those who take action. Are you ready to elevate your business?
TravelShare. It Marketplace is an innovative, dynamic, user-friendly, and fully comprehensive global travel marketplace, featuring all Caribbean islands as a premier destinations. TravelShare. It Marketplace featured daily travel news, arts, culture, events, travel weather news, Individuals' remote work, flex time, paid time off, family leisure time, and travel deals to better connect the U.S., Caribbean, and the Americas worldwide. So no matter where you want to travel in the world for work or leisure, working remotely or on vacation by yourself, with friends or family, whether by air or sea, Travel Share. It Marketplace makes it easy to get you to your destination. Book now at www.travelshareit.com.
I always love that when that comes on. It just kind of reminds me of what we're talking about here from a quantum perspective. Chris, you unpacked a lot. I mean, we're in this new world. We're trying to get our footing. And a lot of people are like, you know what? I want to invest. I want to do the right thing for the next 1 to 3 to 5 years. But this technological platform is constantly changing, and it's hard for me to see solid footing. There's always risk when it comes to finance, when it comes to business, and you want to try to make the best step forward. But when I look at quantum computing, just like artificial intelligence is now the apex predator in the business landscape. Everybody's got an AI this, AI that, sudden. But it's still technology. And when you say, I can automate, I can do things better, quicker, faster, so I'm going to do that. When it comes to quantum, and I just explained earlier that we're not dealing with zeros and ones. We're talking about simultaneous compute that is a game changer when it comes to speed to market. Things of people in business understand that term, speed to market. So if I can get speed to market using a quantum compute model that I can look at a landscape or ethos or system and understand it intellectually from an intelligent technology plane and make better decisions, I'm going to have a competitive advantage. Looking at that as well, because I have competitors, I don't know how ubiquitous this type of technology is that's going to be available throughout the world. People will have, from an end-use compute, I can get my hands on a quantum compute model. I don't know. I don't know how readily available it's going to be. They're only going to be your tech states that have access to these quantum models. Is it the nation states that have access to these quantum models, or is it going to be me and you have access to a quantum compute model utilized in a business strategy to increase my outcomes? I don't know. I don't know where the future is going to look in that world. When I look at Chris's crystal ball and see what you're thinking in that area, how the use of quantum could be used in the next 12 months.
Well, so Greg, let's talk about the physical quantum computer just for a second, because one of the limitations today on quantum computing is that they generate a huge amount of heat. So the quantum computers themselves have their own cooling systems, their own refrigerator systems that have to be part of it to be able to keep everything stable and being able to not overheat, right? So that's a challenge right now that's really being worked on. I think that we'll see breakthroughs in that, I would say, over this next year. Even today, there are quantum computers that you can buy again, being able to physically manage them is still a challenge for most organizations, which is why they really haven't gone down that route. And I've heard, people who were much smarter than me in this area say that, oh, it'll be 5 years. I don't see that. I see that there's going to be benefits from quantum computing, in the next year and a half, 2 years, we'll see. And we'll be talking about it much more. And, it's just like what always happens in technology, Grant. Right now, of course, the big buzzwords are AI, artificial intelligence, and that's being applied to everything and should. There's real benefits. And in my view, we're scratching the surface yet of what that can really bring to us, not only in business and in our financial lives, but also our personal lives, right? So I'll just give a little interesting side story. Because like I said, when I travel around, I go to all these different events, I'm always looking around as one of my side interests. What is going on in quantum computing? I was at earlier this year in Barcelona, Spain, at the Mobile World Conference. It's a huge, huge event that covers 8 halls. They had over 110,000 people there. So one of the biggest events that I get the privilege of attending. So while I was there, one of the companies that is very interesting for me is the Chinese company Huawei, right? They're known very much in as a big competitor to Samsung and Apple on the phone business. They're really kind of across the board. They do a lot of work in the banking space. And when I went there, and in fact, to tell you the size of the presence that they had, Hall 1 was just for them. Okay, they had the largest presence at this particular event this past year.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time there, and as I'm going through there, I'm asking about quantum computing. I'm not getting anything at all. Okay. I went and they had an area for lunch, and I went there and I'm going around. Of course, it's crowded, Grant, and I see a table with a chair open, and I asked, can I sit there and everything? And there was a big hesitation, and they said yes. And I sat there and talking to a girl there who was working very hard on her computer, and she's working on a presentation. She is an employee of Huawei, and she was there working on a presentation they were doing for one specific client about quantum connections, which I spoke about a little bit earlier. And I had a very nice conversation with her about it. So what that tells me also is that there's a lot of companies out there doing a lot of work, but not saying anything.
Mm.
And yeah, that goes on, I think, a lot. You don't have a product yet, so you're not out there promoting and talking about it. But I think it's significant in this space because I think this is happening across a lot of industries. Okay. Now, this particular presentation that she was working on was for quantum connections, but really for the telephone space, right? Again, where you have huge amounts of data that you have to move, and you have huge amounts of people that you're servicing. I mean, into the multi-millions, right? So another great application for this quantum technology. So it was very interesting to see that, but it really leads me to believe that we'll see developments much sooner. And I say that because there's less conversation about it in terms of what companies are and institutions are saying publicly, right? So it's that behind the scenes arm race going on right now. Nobody wants to say anything because they don't want to give their competitors any advantage, but they're all furiously working in the background on these things. And as in business, Grant, and as you know, it doesn't really pay for you just to announce something new, to announce a new technology, a new product, whatever, unless you already have customers for it.
Yeah.
So that's my suspicion right now is these companies are working on it. They're working with potential customers. And when they start having some customers buy in, then we will hear a lot about it. By the way, for us, we'll be kind of late then at that point, which is why we need to talk about it now.
100% on that. We definitely do need to talk about it. We're going to take a another short break here, and then we're going to come back. And we're going to really kind of unpack what you just said, because we're going to talk about the big elephant in the room. Because when you take quantum and you take AI and you combine those together to get quantum AI, man, we're talking about a big game changer there. So we're going to break and we'll come back. We'll kind of unpack some of that. All right. So what I wanted to say around in the quantum and AI space, and we're talking about readiness. We understand that AI consumes and processes enormous amounts of data in a very, very short period of time. Well, quantum can accelerate the training and inference of complex systems. So when you understand them and you put those two together, a lot of people hear about AI modeling, you get into explainable AI, AGI, which is kind of generative intelligence on a human level, human machine learning. This is really going to change things, and it will never be able to go back, because we're unleashing. Someone told me about a year or two ago, we're unleashing this new life form, if you would say, into our ecosystem of how we live and work every day. And what I just said, if you got something that's thousands of times smarter than an average human, can reason, can understand emotional intelligence, not just analytical intelligence or information. This is a huge thing. Some of those things we saw in sci-fi, right, where the machine can talk and can control and it can do things almost on its own, kind of a Skynet kind of thing. This is not so much, I don't think, science fiction anymore. It's possible. Now, how do we control it? I don't know. You just brought up something which I think is another thing we have to consider, is the actual physics of the quantum model, meaning energy consumption, radiation, heat consumption, even in blockchain cryptocurrency. This is a big problem because it still takes a lot of power to compute at that level simultaneously on a worldwide scale. And to do that, that's not the requirement of all these data centers just churning and burning. And people don't understand how data centers still work in a very terrestrial world. We call it cloud computing. It's really earth computing. It's taking a lot of natural resources to make this happen. So we still got to see how this is going to go, but the capability and the possibility is staring us in the face. This is interesting. I just want to, from a readiness standpoint, what would you do, Chris?
Well, Greg, first I'll say you used the word that, this is possible. And I would change it to say this is probable. Okay. It's just a matter of time at this point, because, it's just a little further down the road for us. And that road, we're traveling at greater speeds down that road. So very, very much more probable than possible. And you're quite right. When we start talking about and it's exciting to me. Quantum computing with AI. So as we know, and you mentioned, AI consumes a lot of information, but today it's pretty much information of an intellectual nature, right? It's problem solving, it's task doing, it's these kind of based transactional information, and kind of what is missing from what we see in some of the movies on the movie screen is that emotional aspect, and it's out there already. It'll come more in the future when we start looking at what goes on in computing, right? The emotional aspect, and that's one of the things that still make us unique as human beings, is that our brain at this point is still unmatched in computed power, right? We can take in so many different aspects of, just looking around, your eyes pick up so many things that help us with our decisions that are not available today to a machine, right? So this is one of the aspects. Now, quantum very likely can get us closer to that, because now when you're able to process so much more information so much faster, you can start taking in some of these emotional considerations, and they can actually be programmable to be able to understand bigger and bigger pictures and models of how those decisions are made. So I think that we'll really look to see that the combination of AI and quantum computing will just take us to another level in that space of how it can really benefit our daily lives.
Yeah, this is interesting times. When I think of just being human and what makes me human, scientists talk about two parts of the brain. You've got the analytical side of yourself, but then you've got the creative side. That creative side, from a machine standpoint, it's not easy to stimulate because it can be habitual at times, but then it can be unpredictable. And then it could make instantaneous decisions to go in a different direction. Machines, I think they're still, right now, they're programmed on logic, more like Spock. Think about one side of your brain is like Spock, the other side of your brain is like Captain Kirk, right? Sometimes, as we see, as you go through the series, a lot of people are familiar with the series, that Captain Kirk is right. Like, even though logically it doesn't make sense, if you do all the calculations, that's not the direction you should go in. However, you endeavor into new field of experience, and those aren't in the past. And I talk to people a lot of times. A lot of times, our information and data is like looking in the rearview mirror, meaning it's already happened. So you're taking information that's already happened, and then interpreting it, or say, studying it, and then getting patterns. And if that same pattern exists in the near future, it'll probably be pretty accurate, precision. However, if any one of those variables are actually different, that precision will be not aligned with this new present or new future, because you introduce new variables to the equation. This is what makes us really human, and this is why we need to understand the human in the loop still needs to be maintained because machines, no matter how we might want to simulate human behavior, it's not a conscious entity. And when we understand consciousness at a much higher level and understand imaginative will, the will is still very important. So machines don't have will; they have programmable behavior, and understanding the difference. Now, I say that to say this, because we live in a living world, and all around us, we live in living things that are constantly happening. Some of these things, again, are cyclical and are habitual. And some things are what we call intangibles that come into it. And how many times have you dealt with human beings, even in your own household, when you think of a predictable experience tonight, and it completely changes because of new variables that are introduced? I want to say this with totally understand what I just said. You can't be so dependent on something that is so habitual and precise, knowing that in the human world, it can change at a moment's notice. So we need to understand that as we move forward.
Well, Grant, some excellent points, especially about what makes us human compared to machines. And I would throw out there, I would suggest that when computers can start independently writing their own code, when they can independently program themselves, they will get closer to challenging us on a day-to-day basis. And it's not something we're controlling, right? They're actually looking at the data that they've been given and are reprogramming a certain direction. So it really becomes interesting to some people, possibly scary to other people, is really exciting. And look, we'll see what happens there. But let's talk a little bit more further about how we started today off, which was quantum computing in banking, right? And quite interesting, for the newest issue of Financial IT magazine, which comes out in just a couple of weeks, my publisher's letter is the quantum bank. So it's good talks about, in this article, we'll talk about different things that will help in the banking space in particular, right? So one of the things that we just touched on a little bit was security, right? Speed, critically important, and one of the biggest benefits of quantum computing. Security, though, is also a big potential benefit. Of course, that's very attractive to banks and institutions in the financial space. So let me give you some idea. Again, today, blockchain is the most secure database that we have, right? It hasn't been cracked. Nobody's been able to hack into it or anything. But cryptocurrency, by its very nature, is based on very complex math problems. That's the crypto part of cryptocurrency, right? These huge math problems that get solved. Now, if you can present computing power, quantum computing, that can go ahead and process faster, substantially faster, bigger amounts of information, yes, can it solve complex math problems faster and easier than we've ever seen before? Absolutely. The potential is without a doubt there. So there's where the possibility is of being able to hack into or break a blockchain, potentially. I don't know today of anyone that's done that or that has been done. But again, I'll go back to you and caution that there are companies and blockchains out there that specifically say they're quantum proof. And I have to kind of feel right now it's more of a marketing technique than it is an actual provable or certifiable ability to protect that blockchain from a quantum intrusion. So, Grant, I say to you on this is, when you start thinking about business and the money that it takes to move business, I would suggest you can see the potential for quantum computing.
Big potential. At the same time, people are conservative. Money is emotional. I talked about this about last week with another gentleman. Money is emotional. And you do not want to put your money into a situation that it could be compromised. That's the thing. So how do you prove that your vault, your crypto vault, is secure in a quantum world? Because then all of a sudden you give that equation to that particular algorithm and say, you know what? Here's my vault. Break into it. Like, okay, I'm going to figure it out. So it can be interesting. But then if we look at our banking today, literally, no one walks around with all their cash in their pocket, right? You do go to a bank, you trust that value is always available to you through the banking system, which is digital, right? It's digital. So then if it's digital and then you have a quantum apex predator out there, we'll see how secure and emotional you might get over time.
Well, Grant, I would suggest that of course, we're the emotion in money, right? We're the emotion.
Yeah.
If we make money, well, our emotions are very positive. When we lose money or money gets taken from us, yeah, that's the other side of emotion, and it's a non-positive emotion that you start to feel. But this is an age-old problem. I would suggest we could go all the way back to the origins of the human species and say that things of value, when we get them or when they're taken from us, create huge emotional swings, right? Mm-hmm. So that's not new. That's been going on for a long time. And again, when we talk about protecting your money or protecting the system or protecting from banks, I mean, look, people have been figuring out how to rob banks since banks started, right? One of the most famous bank robbers, when he was asked, why do you rob banks? The answer was very simple. It's where the money is, right? So, yeah, so there's always been that challenge in the banking space of, protection and security. So when we talk about right now, quantum computing, what we've mainly been talking about in security is how breakable things might be, okay? And potentially could be. But there's the other side of it, okay? If we can say bad witch and good witch. The good witch is that quantum computing can also make things much more secure, right? Mm-hmm. They can take that crypto meth-based security and take it up several more levels from there. So when I said earlier, it's like an arms race, it truly is. And it's easier, I always think, to focus on what could go wrong. What are the bad things that can happen? But here we're talking about a situation where there's so much that can go right. I mean, more security, clearly a good thing, right? Faster speeds.
It's going to play out. I think it's going to play no matter what, as you said earlier, it's going to happen. Just how it's going to occur. We have to educate ourselves. There's no matter about it. The more you understand certain things, the better that you'll be able to operate within it. So you're not operating in a state of fear, but instead of a state of confidence and knowing how to steer the ship. So I want to thank you for this conversation today, Chris. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, Grant, this was a great topic. One of my favorite right now. Thanks for bringing it up.
You're welcome.
Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel. Our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, rtv.network.